From the opening line of the final score, Hazenbro and Owen Wilson both cover last night. Both those games were terrible football games. Awful games.
I turned on the Vikings game like 10 minutes in, and it's 10-0.
Yeah, it was awful. And Darnold wasn't even very good. It's just the Bears are a mess, man. Caleb Williams, not a good place. And the Falcons win, and Raheem Morris comes out and starts criticizing Kirk Cousins deservedly. But you don't see that a lot. Like after a win, you don't see a lot of coaches that are willing to go at, their most important player or one of their best players. It's a rarity in the coaching community.
Did he throw a touchdown? Because I know he hadn't thrown one, I think, for a few games.
I don't believe so. I think it was all field goals last night.
Okay.
Because it was 15-9, and they just covered because the Raiders couldn't kick a point after the touchdown. It was crushing last night. That would have been a double cover for Hazenbro last night. Anyway, Leafs Stars tomorrow night. Leafs are probably in the air on their way down to Dallas, and we're getting closer to the Christmas break as well. I always wonder how coaches feel about that when players know there's a break right around the corner. Stars won a big one last night against the Capitals at home. Here's Peter DeBoer, the head coach of the Dallas Stars. How you doing, Pete?
Great. Happy holidays, guys. How you doing?
Yeah, you too. We're doing well. Do you concern yourself? You got a veteran team down there. Do you worry that they're putting the cart before the horse and seeing a break in a week or what?
You know what? We actually we really pumped in a lot of young players into our lineup here over the last couple of years. I know you know that, but even a few more this year. Wyatt Johnson feels like a veteran. He's 21 years old because he's already played for 2 years. This is his third season, but we put in Bork and Back and Bischel, three young rookies that all have spent some time in the American League or up in the lineup every night. So we've got a nice mix of veterans and young guys, and I'm not worried about the veteran guys. They've been there, done that, and they know what works and what doesn't this time of year. I know they're imparting that knowledge on the young guys, but they're still young guys, and sometimes you have to learn yourself. So there's a lot of distractions around the holidays with friends and family in town and other things. So hopefully we can keep our focus here for another few days.
Absolutely. I was referencing another coach in another sport, calling out a player after a win. What is your general philosophy on that? Speaking to the media, can you be more comfortable talking about your players after a win in some ways because not everyone's stressed out? How do you approach talking with the media and being open and honest and maybe getting messages across based on how your whole team played as opposed to that one in particular player?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I kind of have a rule that I unless I would say it to the player and do say it to the player, I don't think I would say it to the media. I think if what you're saying to the player is your truth and where you feel he's at, then I don't think there's anything wrong with answering a question honestly. Obviously, we don't do that every time, and we don't make all those conversations public. But it definitely is easier to take criticism after a win than it is after a loss, when everyone's a little bit more sensitive.
Pete, in watching your team, there's so many guys I feel like that guy deserves more attention, that guy deserves more attention. I could ask you about so many of them, but for people who don't know about Heiskanen and just what he's about, what would you say?
Yeah, wow. I mean, he's one of those players. I've had a handful of them over my career where, he's every night on the bench as a coach, you turn into a fan, at different moments. Just watching him, he'll take off with the puck and weave his way through 4 or 5 guys, and all of a sudden you're not coaching, you're a fan, just watching it from a wow perspective. Or a defensive play where he comes back and makes a stick check on a guy that you thought was long gone or free and clear. So, I think every night he gives me a couple of those moments, and the great players that I've coached over my career, have done that. Jaromir Jagr, Ilya Kovalchuk, Joe Thornton, to name a few. So he's in rare company that way.
With Peter DeBoer, and you're going to see him at the Four Nations face-off. You're on a staff, John Cooper's staff, and I'm curious, how you plan on game planning against your own players, because you're going to see a number of them scattered throughout, the tournament. Will that be your responsibility? Like, will Coop come to you and say, "Okay, how are we getting past this kind of breakout?" What can you tell us on that, Pete?
Yeah, you know what? I'm sure we're going to spend some time on a pre-scout on the players on the other team, and I'm sure we'll all contribute. I mean, we've got a great staff that if we haven't coached them personally, we know people who have coached them, between Coop and Rick Tocchet and Bruce Cassidy and myself and Misha Donskoff. Obviously, and then the management team, Doug Armstrong and Jim Mill and Kyle Dubas. And Donnie Sweeney. So I mean, there's just been so many guys that we've had either direct access to or indirect access to. So I don't think there's any secrets at that tournament, as you know, Hazy. I think everybody knows everybody. I think we've been there, done that scouting report on all the best players in the world, and I think everybody knows them. So. I'm just excited. I'm really excited about working with our group, and I think most of our attention as a coaching staff will be on our group and trying to get our group, up to speed and to play a team game as quickly as possible.
Is there one player that you're kind of like sneaky looking forward to coaching? Maybe Crosby?
You know what? I've been involved with Hockey Canada before and had sit on a few teams all the way back to a World Junior in North Dakota 100 years ago. So when he was a 16-year-old, I've had him at a World Championships. I've been fortunate that most of these guys I've had the opportunity to work with before. It's the opportunity to work with them again. And then there's a couple new ones, like, obviously McDavid and Taves, have not played a best on best before, and so I haven't had an opportunity to work with either of those guys. So I'm excited about Makar and Taves, Makar and Taves and McDavid. Those are some names off the top of my head that I'm excited to get a first chance to work with.
Well, you get to see Makar and Taves a lot within the division. I'm sure
too much.
Probably too much. I would think too much. And, we always talk about the Atlantic and the division the Leafs are in, and, how it's a deep division. And it's been a little bit top-heavy, but the likes of Florida and Tampa and Toronto and Boston have been so good for so long. And you look at the Central, I mean, it is loaded with the way Winnipeg started. Now Minnesota has been arguably the hottest team in the league. Yourselves, Colorado, I mean, how much of the messaging, if at all, Pete, is directed towards your team about trying to gain home ice, trying to maybe win the division, and how beneficial that could be for you guys come playoff time?
Yeah, it's a great point. And you're not even including, Nashville, who everyone predicted preseason was going to be a contender with what they did, and Utah, who's really, I think, playing some very good hockey. So, you know what? Honestly, we finished second to the Rangers last year for the President's Trophy. The Rangers won it. I think we would both attest, Pete Laviolette and me, that chasing a President's Trophy in the regular season isn't the be-all and end-all with who ended up winning the Cup. So, and typically that's the case more times than not. So, I think you want to get in, you want to be healthy when you get in, you want to be playing a really solid brand of hockey, and I think that's the priority right now.
Pete, you've got the Leafs tomorrow. I wondered what you've noticed about how they're playing under Craig Berube.
Yeah, totally different. We were diving into some of the analytics today at the rink, and it's amazing how they've transformed, from what I would have called a rush team over the last few years that thrived on turnovers, and to a team that has been really solid in the offensive zone and a forecheck team. Much more direct game. A lot more of a slot presence in the offensive zone, scoring goals, that way. So you can see his fingerprints on their game. And, from a game planning perspective, we've got to be aware of that. On the flip side, they're always going to have that rush element to them, especially with Matthews and Marner and Nylander in the lineup. So, that's always going to be a dangerous piece of their game.
Yeah, they're playing well. I mean, this is one of those fun games where you see them go down to Dallas. I think Matthews scored a big goal down there a couple of years ago. I think it was, did he hit 60 in Dallas, Jonas? I think it was.
That was Buffalo.
Or maybe he passed Rick 5 down in Dallas. Anyway, he scored a big one down there. But you only get to see him once a year. And, I'm sure these are fun games. You mentioned earlier sometimes you find yourself being a fan. Sure, this would be one of those games where you're like, all right, let's see what we got tonight.
Yeah, for sure. And then one of my favorite players that I got the opportunity to coach last year on our run to the conference final, Chris Tanev. Looking forward to seeing him and hopefully catching up with him for a minute. I was a huge fan of his game, and we were sorry to see him leave Dallas, but I see his impact on the Leafs and how they're defending, really clearly, and not surprised either by his success there.
Yeah.
The Leafs center dilemma: who can strengthen the roster? If you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan like me, you know the team's center depth has been a constant concern this season. With Austin Matthews set to return from a mysterious upper body injury next week, the excitement of having our star back is palpable. However, there are still serious issues to address in the center position to keep the team competitive and, of course, fuel our playoff dreams. David Kampf, a key piece in the center rotation, is sidelined with a lower body injury. As if that weren't enough, Kaye Jarnkrok is still recovering from surgery, leaving another gap in the lineup. Max Domi, expected to be a versatile asset, has been placed on injured reserve, further aggravating the situation after missing consecutive practices due to lingering pains. To sum it up, the Leafs are missing 4 functional centers, and the pressure to act is mounting. James Myrtle, a respected Leafs analyst and contributor to The Athletic, highlighted a series of potential trade targets to address this dilemma during his appearance on the J.D. Bunky's podcast. Among the names mentioned, 2 stood out: Nick Jugstad and, for the nostalgic fans, a possible reunion with Ryan O'Reilly. Jugstad seems to be Myrtle's favorite, and for good reason. The player, who signed a 2-year deal with the Utah Hockey Club last offseason, carries a manageable $2.1 million cap hit, which is essential for a team as salary cap-strapped as the Leafs. Additionally, standing at 6 feet 6 inches and weighing 205 pounds, he would bring not only physicality but also consistent offensive contributions. Jugstad is the most viable option for the Leafs right now, Myrtle stated on the podcast. And he's right. Experienced and versatile, Jugstad has played for several teams, including the Florida Panthers, Pittsburgh Penguins, Minnesota Wild, and Edmonton Oilers, and could quickly adapt to the Leafs dynamic. With an affordable contract and a solid track record, he offers a practical solution without sacrificing too many future assets. However, it's impossible to ignore the possibility of a Ryan O'Reilly return. Yes, we know he chose the Nashville Predators last summer in search of a quieter environment, but the Leafs management still holds him in high regard. The 2019 Stanley Cup winning captain with the St. Louis Blues is precisely the type of player any contender would love to have on their roster. However, the cost of bringing him back would be steep, both in terms of trade assets and cap space adjustments, as Nashville or a third team would need to retain part of his salary. I don't think the O'Reilly scenario is entirely out of reach, Myrtle said, showing that there's optimism within the organization. However, there are doubts about how much it's worth investing in a 33-year-old player, even with his impeccable credentials. Meanwhile, cheaper internal options like Steven Lorentz, Connor Dewar, Pontus Holmberg, and Fraser Minton have been mentioned. But let's be honest, these names might serve as short-term stopgaps, but they're far from offering the stability and impact the team needs. The pressure is all on GM Brad Treliving. He knows that despite the Leafs' solid performance so far, the center position is crucial to sustaining any championship aspirations. With the trade deadline approaching, Treliving has likely intensified his efforts to finalize a deal. And we, the fans, are eagerly awaiting good news. For now, all we can do is trust that the team can weather this tough phase and hope a solution, whether it's Jugstad, O'Reilly, or another name, arrives before things spiral out of control. After all, as we all know, the Leafs don't have the luxury of wasting another season with a promising but incomplete roster. The time to act is now. The Leafs center dilemma, expanding on the potential solutions. The Toronto Maple Leafs, amidst another promising yet tumultuous season, face one of their most pressing challenges, addressing a depleted center lineup that threatens to derail their momentum. While the return of Austin Matthews is a beacon of hope, the broader picture remains dire, requiring urgent action from the front office. With Kampf, Jarnkrok, and Domi sidelined, the team's depth has been stretched thin. The immediate impact is clear on both ends of the ice. Defensively, the Leafs are struggling to suppress opposing top lines without reliable two-way centers. Offensively, puck distribution and power play setups have been less dynamic, as the makeshift lineups lack the same chemistry. This imbalance underscores the necessity for reinforcements. Nick Jugstad, as highlighted by James Myrtle, presents the most realistic trade option. His affordable contract and towering physical presence align perfectly with the Leafs' needs. Beyond his imposing stature, Jugstad brings versatility. He can play both center and wing, a flexibility that would allow head coach Sheldon Keefe to adjust the lineup dynamically. However, acquiring Jugstad isn't without complications. The Utah Hockey Club, formerly the Arizona Coyotes, is currently rebuilding but may still demand a premium return for their experienced forward. The Leafs will likely need to part with a mid-tier prospect or draft pick to make the deal work. With their prospect pool already thin, Treliving faces a tough decision. Another name that excites fans and analysts alike is Ryan O'Reilly. The former Conn Smythe winner and Stanley Cup champion has a proven track record of elevating teams in high-stakes situations. His leadership during his brief stint with Toronto last season left a lasting impression. Yet, the Predators have little incentive to move him unless the offer is overwhelming. Should the Leafs pursue O'Reilly, it would almost certainly require a multi-asset package. A first-round pick and a promising young player like Nick Robertson might need to be part of the conversation. Additionally, Nashville would have to retain salary, a process that often involves a third-party team to facilitate. The logistics are challenging but not insurmountable. Internal options like Pontus Holmberg and Fraser Minton offer short-term relief but lack the experience needed for a deep playoff run. Holmberg has shown flashes of potential, but his limited NHL exposure raises questions about his readiness for a consistent role. Minton, while promising, is still developing and would be better served continuing his growth in the minors. A wild-card option could be exploring European leagues or waiver claims to unearth an overlooked talent. Teams like the Vegas Golden Knights and Colorado Avalanche have found gems in unconventional ways, and the Leafs scouting department may need to cast a wider net to uncover an affordable, immediate solution. Another factor complicating the Leafs' decisions is the looming salary cap crunch. With Matthews' extension set to kick in soon, Toronto must be mindful of every financial commitment. Adding a high-priced center now could limit flexibility during the off-season, forcing Treliving to juggle short-term needs against long-term sustainability. Trade timing will also play a pivotal role. Acting quickly could stabilize the team and prevent further slip-ups in the standings, but it may come at the cost of negotiating leverage. Alternatively, waiting closer to the deadline could yield better deals as selling teams grow more desperate. The risk, however, is enduring several more weeks of uncertainty. Sheldon Keefe's role in navigating this storm can't be overstated. His ability to extract maximum effort from an injury-riddled lineup will be crucial. Keefe has already experimented with unconventional line combinations, but the lack of true centers limits his tactical options. A new acquisition would provide the stability he needs to implement a more structured game plan. The Leafs locker room has remained resilient through adversity, with veterans like John Tavares and Morgan Rielly stepping up as vocal leaders. However, even their efforts may not be enough to overcome the absence of key personnel. Reinforcements are not just a luxury, they're a necessity. For fans, the anxiety is palpable. After years of playoff heartbreak, this season feels like another chapter in the saga of unmet expectations. Yet, there's cautious optimism. The team has shown glimpses of brilliance, and the addition of a solid center could be the missing piece that transforms them from contenders to genuine threats. As the trade rumors swirl, one thing is certain: the next few weeks will be critical in shaping the Leafs season. Whether it's Jugstad, O'Reilly, or an unexpected name, the decision made by Brad Treliving and his staff could define not just this campaign, but the team's trajectory for years to come. For now, we wait, hopeful that the Leafs will seize the moment and finally deliver on their immense potential. Will the Leafs make their move? As the speculation intensifies, the Leafs fan base is holding its collective breath, waiting for signs of a breakthrough.